So we can break apart the hit me if I seem a little unimpressed with this. An antisocial pessimist, but usually I don't mess with this, and I know.
Hello friends, welcome back to data preparation challenge series in PowerBI. This is not the data preparation challenge video. This is a DAX challenge. Now let's explore what our DAX challenge is. So here I'll have an Excel file here, customer subscription Excel file. So in that we have two table here, the customers and the subscription table here. You can see. So here we have customer ID and the name of that customers, and we have subscription table. So basically these two tables got linked here based on this customer's ID, and here we have subscription number, that's a serial number here, and we have the starting date of the subscription, the date where the customers is subscribed to a made a subscription here. Then we have the end date for them, you can see. And we have so null also, that means for the end date we have null also for some rows here. That means these customers have the subscription, so these are the active subscription active customers who made a subscriptions here. Now let's see how we can count the customers within this time period. That is, I want the how many subscriptions are there within this time period from 10 to 15. Let's say from 10 to 12, when 10 to 2020 to 12 3 2020. I want to how many customers are there within this time period who subscribed, who are the active subscribers here. Now let's see how we can do this. So I'll go to this Power BI, and I'll insert my Excel file here. Let's import my Excel file. So this is my file. I'll also provide this file in the description below. Now from here, again we select the table instead of sheets here, and I'll click on transform data. Let's quickly rename these files here. So this is my customer stable, and this is my subscription table. And I'll close and apply. Before that, what we need is we need a dates table, because here what we want is we want the within the time period how many subscribers are there. So here we need to work on this time intelligence functions here. That's why what we need to do is we need to create a date table here. So what I'll do, I'll go to this new source and I'll click on blank query. From here we select advanced editor, and I'll paste my M code here for the dates table here. So we have M code, yeah, here. So I'll copy this file and I'll paste it here. So we can see we have no syntax errors. You can also generate these dates here using calendar functions in Power BI. So I'll click on done here. Now what I'll do, I'll provide the start date. So let's see what's the start date here. So we have 2019 to 2020. So let's provide an input, let's say for first month, January 1st to first date 2019 to 31st 12 2020, and let's say for fiscal year. So let's click on invoke here. So now we got the dates table here. Let's rename this to, let's say this is my dates tbl. Now I'll click on close and apply. Now let's see the connections here. So what I'll do, I'll click on this model view, and you can see this dates table is not linked with this, because we don't want these tables to be linked here, because what we want here is we want the customers count within the time period from start date to end date. We want the customers count, we don't want the date here. So if we if we join this dates table with the subscription table, then what we get is we get the date here. So what we want is we want the customer count of customers within this start date and end date time frame. So what I'll do, so make sure that this dates table is not linked with these two tables here. So this is the case. Now what I'll do, I'll click on report view. Now let's create a new measure here. So what I'll do, I'll right click on it and create a new measure here. So as I already said, this is a DAX challenge here. Now let's write a DAX function here. So this is my active subscription. So I'll say active subs as equals to, and let's create some variables here. Let's create, let's say, I'll use a selected value function. So I'll say, let's rename this as a current. I'll say current date. So we got the current date here. So I'll use selected value function. Why I'm using this, because I want the filter here, that is the dates table filter. That's why I use the dates table date here, and I use the selected value to get only one date is selected here. And yeah, we got the current date here. Then I'll create another variable, that is let's say my first first start date and here I'll use minimum function to get the lowest record. That's my start date here, that I'll use a subscriptions table start date here. We got this. So let's provide underscore here. Yeah, now what I'll do, I'll create another variable. So this is my subs here. This is subscriptions. I'll say subs. Then I'll say let's use a filter function here. So I'll be using filter function, and we need to provide a table here. So I'll use my subscription table. This table need to be filtered based on a filter expression. And here what I'll do, I'll use is blank function, because for some rows here you can see, for some rows we have end date here blank. So that's why I use the end date should be is, if the end date is blank, we need to provide a condition here. So I'll say if the subscriptions end date is blank, or I'll use or, so I'll use double pipe here. Then I'll say if this or the subscription end date, subscriptions table end date, we need to provide end date here, end date, subscriptions end date, this, if this is greater than or equal to the current date, and I'll say, so we don't need to provide this here bracket. So I'll say this, and I'll say double and this subscription, I'll explain this, just wait for a second. So I'll say subscriptions table start date, this should be less than or equal to the current date. I'll close this. Now what we done here is we filter this subscriptions table using a condition, that is if this subscription table, this subscription ends table, this is a null value. So we have null values here, and sorry, or this subscription end date. So this subscription end date, this should be greater than or equal to the current date. So we got the current date, so the selected date, that should be greater than the current date, and the subscription start date, that should be less than the current date. That means we have an active subscriptions here. That's why we used less than or equal to here to count the active subscriptions. Now what I'll do, I'll return something here. Before that, we need what we need the counting here. So I'll use let's count rows. count count rows, and I'll use count rows function here to count what? To count the subscriptions here. So I'll use subs here to count these subscriptions. So we created these subscriptions here. So we need to count that. So that's why we use a count rows function here. Then what I'll do, I'll need to return something here. So I'll return what? I'll say if this current date, so the selected date, if this is less than or equal to the today date, I want that. And what is, and this current date, that is the selected date, that should be greater than or equal to the date first start date, that's the minimum date when the subscription has been made. Then if this is the case, and again I'll use if the result is true, I'll say if, again I'll use if condition to check if this blank, that is the count rows. So we have count rows here. If the active subscriptions are null, that is blank, then what we need to do is we need to return 0 here. That's why 0, or else I want what? I want the counting subscription count here. That's why I use counters. So what we done here is we just we used this current date. We used current, if this current date, that is the selected date, that should be less than the today date, that should be fine. This, and this current date, that is the selected date, that should be greater than the first start date when the subscription has been made. Then what we done is we used the if statement, and we use this count rows. If this count row subscriptions count is 0, if that is blank, then I want 0 to be placed here, or else I want counting of this. So what I'll do, I'll click on enter here. Now let's visualize this. Let's say let's create this area chart here. Now what I'll do, I'll add my active. Before that, we need to add a date here. So I'll add a date field here, and I don't want the hierarchy. I want a date here, and I want this active subscriptions. I'll add this. I can see. Now let's create a filter here for the date. Now I'll select a slicer here where it is. This is slicer. Now let's add a date here. Let's add a date hierarchy here. Let's add a date field here. Yeah. Now let's format this here. Slicer settings. Between. I'll select a between here. Yeah. Now let's increase the values here. Let's increase values to, let's say 20. Let's say 15. This is the date here. Let's remove this slicer header, and let's format this chart also. Let's increase the x-axis and y-axis values. So let's first increase the x-axis values. So let's increase it to, let's say 15. Yeah, 15 maybe. Now let's try to filter here. Now let's say I want from 20 from this from 17/3 2019 to 19/4 2020. So you can see here we got the subscription count here. So we have active subscription on the 11 January 2020. We have one subscription count here, then we have two, then we have here two, then we have three here, and then we have one subscription got increased here, one subscriber got increased here, then we have one subscription we lost here. You can see now, then we got one subscription count again, then we lost here. So this is how we do this DAX challenge here. Maybe you get this DAX challenge in the future. That's why I'll explain this. So stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.